Good morning, I'm Chris Fox, and today we're going to be talking about mastering your inner critic. So your inner critic is someone we are all familiar with. In my case, it's a he. In your case, it might be a she. But what your inner critic has in common between all of us is how they talk to you and what they tell you. So your inner critic is the one that is telling you that you suck. Your writing is horrible and no one is ever going to read this, and also, you are ugly. Your inner critic is a bastard and they sabotage your writing. They destroy your productivity. So as long as you are allowing that inner critic to master you, that's what gets you tinkering on the same sentence for 45 minutes, and that's what prevents you from finishing that story or that novel that you're working on. And for me, changing that, mastering my inner critic, becoming the one in charge is what has allowed me to become so productive. So for those that don't know, I put out a book called 5,000 Words Per Hour, and I use that method to track my own writing. And my daily quota is 5,000 words. So for those of you that are doing National Novel Writing Month and aiming for that 50K, these days I typically put out 100K every month. And I'm able to do that only because I have made a deal with my inner critic. And when I say made a deal, we sat down and had our summit, our peace talks, if you will, and went over kind of the situation between us. And what I demanded of my inner critic is that it change the way that it has dialogue with me. So that instead of saying things like, you're terrible and you will never make it and your writing is awful and no one will ever want to read it, it had to get more specific, and it had to say things like, this scene doesn't flow or this dialogue is awful. And what I would then do is, instead of allowing it to derail me and stopping my writing to work on that sentence that it had told me was terrible, I'd just make a note of it and keep writing. And at the end of any given scene, I would jot down whatever notes it had given me. So I would write a note on that chapter that says, dialogue is awful. Now, in exchange for agreeing to change the way that it talked to me, my inner critic demanded that I improve. In its words, you need to stop sucking as a writer. So what I did to that end is I started buying books on craft. And every single day, I would spend 10 to 15 minutes, usually in the bathroom in the mornings or sometimes in the checkout line at Safeway, reading about whatever topic it had last told me I was bad at. So dialogue's a great example. I picked up a book on dialogue and I spent probably 2 months every morning reading a chapter and then practicing what it taught me. And what I found is that over time, instead of my inner critic working against me and sabotaging me, we started working on the same team. Because what we both wanted is for me to be a better writer. Instead of being at cross purposes where I was trying to write and my inner critic was telling me that I was a terrible failure of a person, it was now telling me, hey, here's these specific problems in your writing, and I would work on them. And we've been doing this for a while now. God, I think it's been 2 or 3 years since I mastered my inner critic, and now I can churn out the words, and I don't even think about that critic anymore. I welcome that critic when they pop their head up and say, hey, you got a problem, because it means I've identified an area of my writing that I can work on. No longer am I paralyzed when I sit down in that chair to write, because we're allies now, my critic and I. So if you want to succeed at National Novel Writing Month, or just finish your novel in general, one of the keys is going to be mastering your inner critic. Make that critic an ally. Don't let it talk to you the way that it's currently talking to you. Make sure that it's helping you get better, and that's going to be better for both of you, you and the critic. And if you can set up a system like that, you will be amazed at how much you improve over the next few months.